Benito Juárez was born into silence. Not the silence of peace, but the silence of erasure. He came into the world on March 21, 1806, in the small Zapotec village of San Pablo Guelatao, high in the misty mountains of Oaxaca. His parents were humble shepherds who spoke only Zapotec, an indigenous language that predated the Spanish conquest by centuries. Orphaned at the age of 3, Juárez was raised by his uncle in a community where life moved with the rhythms of maize planting, sacred ceremony, and ancestral memory. In this remote and marginalized world, no one expected a barefoot child from a forgotten people to one day lead a nation. At age 12, Juárez couldn't read or write. He spoke no Spanish and had never traveled beyond his village, but he was determined to seek more. He walked 40 kilometers to the city of Oaxaca with no money, no connections, and no plan, only a quiet fire inside him. There, he was taken in by a Franciscan layman who recognized his brilliance. Juárez began studying Spanish, then Latin, theology, and philosophy. He entered seminary briefly but chose law instead. He believed that knowledge was power, but that justice was sacred. At the Institute of Science and Arts of Oaxaca, Juárez earned his law degree, one of the first indigenous men in Mexican history to do so. He specialized in defending indigenous communities, many of whom had been dispossessed of their communal lands by elites or corrupt officials. His advocacy was sharp, logical, and fearless. He quickly gained a reputation not just as a brilliant lawyer, but as a man of integrity. His Zapotec identity was not a barrier, it was the root of his strength. As Juárez entered politics, he joined a generation of liberal thinkers who believed that Mexico needed to break fully from its colonial past. Though the country had achieved independence from Spain in 1821, the Catholic Church and military still held disproportionate power. Church lands made up nearly half of Mexican territory. Priests controlled education. The army answered to no civil authority. Juárez and his allies believed that Mexico could never become a true republic until those feudal privileges were dismantled. He climbed the political ladder, city councilor, civil judge, governor of Oaxaca, always guided by a sense of civic duty. As governor, he implemented land reforms, improved education, and encouraged indigenous participation in public life. He believed that a modern state should serve the common people, not the entrenched elite. For this, he earned both admiration and enemies. By the 1850s, Mexico had fractured between liberals and conservatives. In 1855, the liberals seized control of the government. Juárez was appointed Minister of Justice and helped author a series of sweeping laws. The Juárez Law eliminated special legal privileges for the clergy and military. The Lerdo Law forced the church to sell off its vast land holdings. The Iglesias Law regulated church fees for sacraments, which had bankrupted the poor. These reforms aimed to build a secular democratic Mexico. But to conservatives, they were an attack on tradition and faith. Civil war erupted. Juárez, now vice president, found himself at the center of a maelstrom. In 1857, he helped pass a new liberal constitution. But in 1858, conservatives staged a coup and ousted the liberal government. Juárez, as president of the Supreme Court, was next in line for the presidency. He declared himself the constitutional president and established his government in exile in Veracruz. He had no army, no treasury, and no international recognition. But he had the law, and he had the people. The Reform War raged for 3 years. Juárez stayed in Veracruz, governing through decrees, holding elections, and maintaining a legal government against all odds. His presidency was not born from ambition but from principle. He refused to compromise with those who would restore clerical and military dominance. Finally, in 1861, the liberals triumphed. Juárez returned to Mexico City and was elected president by popular vote. But the nation was in ruins, politically unstable and financially bankrupt. Facing mounting foreign debt, Juárez suspended payments to European powers. France, Britain, and Spain sent warships to Mexico. Britain and Spain negotiated and withdrew. But France, under Emperor Napoleon III, had imperial ambitions. He wanted to install a monarchy in the Americas and undermine U.S. influence. In 1862, French troops invaded Mexico, backed by Mexican conservatives who sought to reverse Juárez's reforms. Juárez once again became a president on the run. He took his government north, moving from city to city while the French occupied the capital. Napoleon installed Archduke Maximilian of Austria as Emperor of Mexico in 1864. For many, this signaled the death of the Republic. But Juárez refused to surrender. He kept the government functioning from Chihuahua, writing proclamations, organizing resistance and insisting that Mexico must remain a sovereign republic. Despite overwhelming odds, Juárez played a long game. He counted on the resilience of the Mexican people and the eventual support of international allies. After the U.S. Civil War ended in 1865, the United States warned France to withdraw. Under pressure, Napoleon III pulled out French troops. Maximilian, naive and increasingly isolated, refused to abdicate. Juárez's forces, now gaining strength, marched south. In 1867, they captured Maximilian in Querétaro. The trial was swift. Maximilian, despite pleas for clemency from European monarchs, was executed by firing squad. The foreign-backed empire was over. The republic had survived, and Juárez had once again defended it, not by sheer military power but by legal legitimacy and moral resolve. Juárez returned to power with immense prestige. He continued to push for reforms, expanding public education, strengthening infrastructure, and promoting civil liberties. But political tensions simmered. Some accused him of centralizing power. Others claimed he ruled too long. Still, he insisted on governing by constitutional means. In 1871, he ran for re-election and won, though the campaign had been divisive. The strain of decades of leadership and exile had taken its toll. On July 18, 1872, Juárez died of a heart attack in his office. He was 66 years old. His death marked the end of an era, but the beginning of a legacy. Juárez had not only defended the republic twice, once from internal reactionaries and once from foreign invaders, he had also reshaped Mexican identity. He proved that an indigenous man could govern a nation rooted in colonial hierarchy. He proved that law could stand against empire. He proved that the people, if organized and principled, could prevail. His motto, El respeto al derecho ajeno es la paz. Respect for the rights of others is peace, remains etched into the Mexican Constitution and into the consciousness of the nation. Today, his face is on currency, his name is on airports and streets, and his statue stands in cities around the world. But his truest legacy lives in the aspirations of every young person who dares to believe that justice matters more than power. Juárez's indigenous identity was not a footnote. It was his foundation. He carried the wisdom of the Zapotec into every courtroom and cabinet meeting. He understood what it meant to be silenced, excluded, and erased. That is why he fought for secular education, for schools that taught science instead of dogma. That is why he defended land reform, for communities dispossessed by centuries of exploitation. That is why he built a republic rooted in rights, not privilege. And yet, his vision remains unfinished. Inequality persists. Indigenous communities still struggle for autonomy, respect, and land. But every time they organize, every time they march, every time they invoke the law against the powerful, they walk in the footsteps of Benito Juárez. In the broader story of Latin America, so often dominated by dictators, emperors, and caudillos, Juárez stands apart. He did not inherit power, he earned it. He did not claim divine right. He upheld constitutional order. He did not erase his roots. He carried them with pride. He was and remains a rare kind of leader, one whose life was a bridge between ancient tradition and modern democracy. In the end, Benito Juárez's greatness was not that he seized power, but that he shared it. Not that he conquered, but that he defended. Not that he ruled, but that he served. He once said, "Among individuals, as among nations, respect for the rights of others is peace." It was not just a slogan, it was his truth. And it remains a light for those who still believe that justice is worth the fight.